No, power in firebending comes from the breath, not the muscles. The breath becomes energy in the body. The energy extends past your limbs and becomes fire.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Silver Site. My name is RJ, and today I'm going to be reviewing what I and many others consider to be the godsend of all television writing. You guessed it, Avatar: The Last Airbender. So join me on this new series of videos as we take a look back at Team Avatar's journey from beginning to end. For those of you who are new and don't know what Avatar: The Last Airbender is about, the premise of the story is the world is divided into 4 separate nations: the Air Nomads, the Water Tribe, the Fire Nation, and the Earth Kingdom. And each nation can bend or manipulate the element that their nation is named for. And in this world, there's only one person who can master all 4 elements, and that is the Avatar. The opening scene, we're introduced to Katara and Sokka, who are brother and sister. Katara represents hope. She represents the voice of reason in the series. She's kind of the mother. And this opening scene, it kind of shows what her character is going to be like for the rest of the series. She's the only waterbender in the Southern Water Tribe. She has an immense respect for her culture. In the beginning, when Sokka refers to waterbending as magic water, Katara really takes offense to that, and she quickly corrects him and tells him that it's an ancient art unique to their culture. Sokka's the provider, Sokka's the protector, he's also the comic relief. In addition to that, he's also extremely sexist, which we get to see very early on in season 1. Alright, so with the opening, we get to see Takara and Sokka in the inner boat fishing on the ocean. Sokka's hunting a fish and he's trying to stab it, and he says that you're not going to get away from me this time, which implies that this man has been hunting for a while and has come up empty-handed. So while they're fishing, Katara ends up waterbending a fish out of the ocean, and she has it above their head. When Sokka goes to stab the fish that he's hunting with his spear, he accidentally ends up bursting the waterbending spear where Katara had the fish caught. So they get into an argument, and like I said, Sokka says something very sexist to her, and Katara just goes off. She's very emotional. She's waving her hand. She's yelling. She's saying how she has to do all the work since mom died, and she's tired of carrying Sokka's weight, and she's tired of washing Sokka's socks, and he's learning to respect her and things like that. She's just literally going off. And in this, she's not realizing that she's waterbending behind her. She ends up breaking apart a huge iceberg, and they end up seeing a boy inside the iceberg. Katara immediately realizes that the boy is alive, and she goes to free him. She bangs on it, and this smoke comes out. He starts glowing, and then Aang comes out. Now, when Aang was released from the iceberg, it let off a beam that shot into the sky, and this is where we get our first look at Zuko. I love Zuko, and Zuko's one of my favorite characters in the series. He represents the layered antagonist. We see him go through a lot in the series, but season 1, episode 1 really shows just how determined he was to catch Aang from the start, how serious and focused he was about fulfilling his destiny of capturing the Avatar to regain his honor. And so when Zuko sees this beam of light, you see his face kind of light up. He gets this glimmer of hope in his eye that he can regain his honor and fulfill his destiny to capture Avatar and return to the Fire Nation. In the scene, we're also introduced to Uncle Iroh. We see him acting as a mentor and father figure to Zuko very early on in the series. He's telling Zuko not to get his hopes up because his father, his grandfather have been trying to hunt the Avatar for generations, and none of them have been able to find the Avatar. Zuko even says at one point that his father and his grandfather did not capture the Avatar because their honor did not hinge on it. We just see how determined he is from the very beginning. That one line right there is the first layer of Zuko's character. So back at the iceberg, we get to see Katara and Aang kind of collapses out of exhaustion into Katara's arms, and she's the first person that he sees when he comes to, and he's looking at her, and he's just kind of like mesmerized for a quick second, and then he snaps out of it, and he asks her to go penguin sledding. Aang represents the hero in this series, the chosen one. He also represents the innocence of a child. And from the moment we meet Aang, we get to see just how much of a child he is. He's 12 years old. He just woke up. He has no idea what's going on. He has no idea where he's at. And the first thing he wants to do is go penguin sledding. And that just speaks to how much of a child he really is at this point. I mean, he's only 12 years old. So Katara and Sokka take Aang back to the village, and they introduce him to the villagers, and they're just wild. They say nobody's seen an airbender in over 100 years, and at first they didn't believe him, and then he did some airbending tricks. Aang ends up telling Aang that there have been no airbenders for 100 years, and we see Aang try to take this in for a brief second, and he's in mild disbelief, but he kind of shakes it off. And at first, when I watched the series, I'm like, well, how does he just brush it off? But then I, rewatching it a couple times, I realized that he's a kid. The important part of this first episode was when we see Katara and Gran talking. Katara tells her grandmother just how much she believes in Aang and just how special she thinks he is. Just like in the opening, she believes that Aang can save the world. Alright, so back on the ship we see Zuko and Iroh running some basic firebending drills. Zuko is sparring with two Fire Nation soldiers, and at the end of the sequence, Iroh gets up and he's very frustrated because Zuko's just not getting it right. And he says something very important to Zuko. And what I like about this is the first time we introduce the firebending, and in the introduction to firebending, we get also some basic mechanics of how firebending works. And when I watched this series the first time, I really didn't appreciate the fact that we were getting these mechanics of what firebending was. But now going back and watching it, I see just how important it is to understand the mechanics of bending. And we know at this point in the series that Uncle Iroh is a firebending master. And part of his mastery is attributed to him mastering the basics. And he's trying to get Zuko to understand that. You don't really appreciate this kind of thing when you're watching the series for the first time. But when you go back and rewatch it, as most of us in the fandom have done, you really get to appreciate just the little bits of world building that they throw in here. Take a look at this clip of Uncle Iroh explaining firebending, and I'm going to come back with a little bit of my commentary.
No, power in firebending comes from the breath, not the muscles. The breath becomes energy in the body. The energy extends past your limbs and becomes higher.
Yo, Uncle Iroh knows what he's talking about. I really didn't appreciate how much Uncle Iroh knows about the true origins of firebending, and we get to learn a little bit more as the series progresses, especially later on in book 3. So back at the Water Tribe, Aang and Katara are having a conversation about Katara being the only waterbender in the entire tribe. Aang offers to take her to the North Pole so that way they can find a master to teach her waterbending. All right, so after that conversation, Aang and Katara decide to go penguin sledding. Now, while they were penguin sledding, Katara said something and it kind of jumped out at me. And it's crazy because I've rewatched the series so many times, but this last rewatch, it kind of stuck out to me. They were having so much fun, and Katara said, "I haven't had this much fun since I was a kid," and Aang replies, "You still are a kid." Now, at this point in the series, we don't know everything that Katara's been through. We only heard her kind of go off on Sokka in the beginning about how she has to take care of everything. But later on in the series, we kind of learn why she is so motherly and why she is the way she is. Katara's mother died at a very young age. And so she had to step up and, step into her mother's shoes at a very, very early age. So, all right, so while they're out sledding, they come across a Fire Navy ship that was part of the first attacks on the Southern Water Tribe. So Katara and Aang go on to the Fire Navy ship, and they see all these weapons, and Katara explains to him that this, is part of the war, and he's like, "Yo, back up. I don't know what you're talking about. What war?" Katara kind of puts 2 and 2 together. She says, "How long were you in that iceberg?" And Aang doesn't really know. He thinks like maybe a couple days, weeks, I don't know. She says she thinks it's more like 100. It makes sense that you've never heard of the war because you were in that iceberg for 100 years. And this is the first time in the series it kind of really hits Aang. It hits him later on. But now we're starting to see it register in Aang's mind that the world he once knew is gone. He's starting to realize everything that he lost, and it's starting to overwhelm him. So Katara being Katara, she senses that Aang is overwhelmed because she sees him having to sit down as he processes this new information. And she suggests that they leave the ship. Aang and Katara are making their way off the ship. Aang accidentally trips a booby trap, and it sends a flare up into the air. Now we cut to Zuko, who's watching all of this through a pirate telescope, and we see Aang, who has Katara in his arms, and he's jumping down from the top of the pole of the ship down, and you can kind of see his airbending. And Zuko says, "Awake my uncle, I found the Avatar." And that's where that episode ends at. And I thought that was a very interesting way to end the first episode, the series premiere. We did get a little world building. We got, a couple of layers of the characters and who they were, good introductions and stuff like that. So I really like the fact that they ended it on kind of like a cliffhanger, because you kind of knew what was coming next, because we had already laid the foundation of Zuko hunting the Avatar, Aang waking up after being in an iceberg for 100 years, and Katara, learning that Aang was the Avatar. So I felt like that kind of like wake my uncle, I found the Avatar, and just to cut it was a great way to build suspense. I remember how I felt the first time I watched the series premiere of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and just the me being on the edge of my seat, and that kind of signified that this long journey of him looking for the Avatar was ending, but the hunt for the Avatar was just beginning. All right, guys, so those are my thoughts on Avatar: The Last Airbender, Season 1, Episode 1, The Boy in the Iceberg. Let's start a discussion down below in the comment section, guys. Later days.